Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Let's give everyone a minute or so to arrive. Unless anyone thinks we're on a holiday now. I sure hope not.
Hi. I have a question. Were we supposed to submit the
No.
sketches? Okay.
No, you're not. So sorry. I'm always distracted when I have to keep on checking that and no one's being locked out. But Christine, no, the way I do it is about every time there's a sketch, I do need you to have them at arm's length during class in case we do get a chance to look at them, or in case it comes up. You have to be prepared for them, but you don't have to scan them or photograph them. You don't put them in the Google Drive, in our shared Google Drive. One of the reasons is if we looked at every step of every project, we would never learn anything about the techniques. It would literally just be critique and no technique at all. So welcome everybody. I want to say hello. I still have people arriving, so to speak. But I want to tell you what's on my mind. Christine just asked a good question. Do you guys have to submit the sketches? You may recall in project one, I didn't actually collect the sketches either. I just want to reiterate about that. I don't collect them because, I would be doing it only for the sake of the discipline, right? Instead, I'd rather trust everybody as mature students that you're doing the production steps that you need. So if a project's taking 4 weeks, as it is, we look at them twice, which takes an incredible amount of time. I figured out recently how long it takes out of the course, and it's definitely 4 or 5 classes worth of collective critique time, leaving me about 10 classes to teach how to use this new tool, Adobe Illustrator. Hang on a second, someone's locked out. But you do need to have them. Guys, I just want to get past that subject, but I want to say real quickly, skipping any week in this class makes things really, really difficult. When we look at the drafts, some people are very ready for critiques, the digital drafts, like we're going to next week. People are very ready to hear it. They make choices, they move on, they improve, and then it's ready for the final week. I see people who would love to have a hand each step of the way. The only reason we can't do that is the size of the class, the amount of hours that we actually have. And let's face it, there's a lot of independence involved in art school. Mind you, not only as the tour guide of this show have I been in art school, but I was in art school myself for about 10 years. 4 years at the School of Visual Arts, a year at one of the teacher studios after that, a year at one school for a master's, a half year for another school. I didn't like either. I went to a third school for 2 more years. A glutton. But one thing I got used to is that the teachers are going to ask you to think for yourselves a lot, even when you're ready and when you're not ready. And that's how we get ready, I suppose. But I will say this, though. A bunch of you have been sending me sketches and that kind of thing to my email address. And I've been doing my best to keep up with them. Sometimes I get back to you very late, not very satisfying. Sometimes I get back to you the next day. I answered a few people today, in fact. About it. So if anyone really does need feedback and it's not on the agenda to actually go over it as a group, yeah, then send it to my email and I will do my best to respond, promise. Can't always do it because I have 100 students, but I try. I really do. I get to most of them in a timely way. Okay, I want to screen share so that I don't lose track of where we are. I do want to say to Rachel, Ashton, Micah, and Eleanor that if you do have cameras, turn them on. I'm sorry, I don't have a memory for this kind of thing. All 4 of you might have told me that your cameras are broken or malfunctioning, and I wouldn't remember from week to week. So, you could chat me. I'll do my best to get a glance at his chat. Unless you have a great reason for keeping the camera off, you have to keep the camera on. So I hope the 4 of you are hearing me. You might want to send me a chat and tell me why your camera is off, and I'll take a look at the first opportunity. All right, I'm going to screen share for right now.
Professor, really quick, is it all right if I just go grab my iPad? Because that's where my sketches are, just in case.
You know, how about you wait and just go grab them if we need them?
Okay, cool.
You know,
Thank
because
you.
yeah, I think, you know, looking at today's handout, I don't think we're going to get a chance to look at them as a group, to be honest.
Okay.
So, you know, we're just going to have to deal with it a little bit. I will say more about that project, but we have some new material we have to mix in. This is the challenge of my class always, really, is finding time to mix in the new tools and uh, as well as go for concept, which is really all about showing them work and talking about it. Um, Ashton, your computer's telling you that you're visible, but you're not. So there's something going wrong. So don't worry, I won't hold it against you. I can't troubleshoot that right now, and I'm not sure I have a good idea for you. And Rachel, I understand you don't want your landlord to participate in my class who's fixing stuff. Got it. So I'm going to move forward. All right, guys, those are good reasons. Let me share my screen. Let's get it off the ground. So I do want to mention a couple things that are a little bit new or new-ish. One, I want to point something out that on the home page, when you go to our menu, you notice I've separated your section from my other section because the holiday schedules got very confusing. But I do want to point out that this is the first class where beneath it, there's a star that says Class 5 Assets. This time it even says Class 5 Assets / C shape. I want to point out that that is a link. And if you want to get the assets while I'm talking, you're welcome to do that. So that if you click this, it will download to your downloads folder. I do want to also mention, though, that if you're already looking at the handout, it's just as good because the handout also has the same link to the class assets. What is the assets? Because we really have not used them as a group before. So assets is an industry type of term when someone's delivering parts to you. So, you know, if you're making a website, that might just be a text file or a folder with a bunch of photos in it. In my class, it's because, well, it is often photos, to tell you the truth, or scanned sketches. It's when I have something we all need to use together as a group. So if you want to download them while I'm talking, you go right ahead. If you're unsure about that, I'm going to be downloading them myself as soon as we're ready. We're not going to be ready for another hour anyway. So if anyone needs help with that, I'll be able to help them. So the assets is really today, it's one asset, to tell you the truth. It's one picture we're going to use to help us learn about the pen tool. All right. I just want to mention quickly something about the YouTube playlist. You know, often your section and my other section get precisely the same lesson. So if that happens, whichever group goes first, I post to YouTube. So you shouldn't be thrown by that if you're looking for a class and you don't recognize the students. But if they're marked with section numbers, right, you're section 101, you see two of them, same week, same class number, but one has your section, please use the one marked your section. That's probably not going to happen often, except when I'm doing critique. I don't think any of you really want to watch the other group's critique. I mean, you're welcome to. It'll be on YouTube as well. But if you see two sections listed, go for yours. Basically, it means the groups diverged. So I just want to mention that. They are up to date, by the way. All the YouTube classes have, all the last classes have been posted at this link. I just want to mention that there is a revisions folder in our Google Drive folder. I didn't put the link here to the Google Drive folder, but one could always get from there from the homework box. So if one was going to go click this link, you'd arrive here, and you'll notice there is a revisions folder. So if you didn't like the way project one went and you handed it on time, you would follow whatever instructions I may have given you. Let's see if I'm giving you any right now. Just make sure that your updated version includes this little mark V2 right before the .ai part. V2, that just means it's a second version. And just drop it into that revisions folder. Again, you just drag it right on top of this. Or you could double click it and then drop it in. Anybody have any questions about revisions? I think my internet connection starting up with us again. Before we go to the internet, and I fixed it. I'm going to take a room. That seems to do better. All right. It's a messier room. Aren't teachers' homes supposed to be super neat? I don't know, but mine is not. All right. So.
You just pick a corner.
That's it, right? I should just see what's behind me. If it's neat enough, that'll have to do. All right, let me get back to the handout, folks. Anybody have any questions about revisions? I know some of you would rather wait till your grades show up, right? And I can't really give you a date right now because it's a particularly busy week. But I'll get to them and I'll keep you posted as soon as possible. All right, if there are no questions, we're going to just take a look, see what comes next. I want to jump right into something incredibly cool, right? And this is more about tools and color, really. And the subject is gradients. So I just want to say something to you guys. Gradients just means two colors or more that blend, right? So you can think of them as blends. And I know a few of you rather impressively figured out how to use them on your own and already use them in Project One. But I have to say, there's more to know. The tools are incredible, right? So if you've never seen blends before, this moment is for you. If you've used them before, I think you're going to find some stuff you're going to like anyway. So I'm going to ask for everybody's complete concentration. Let's just open Illustrator. Everybody just jump in with me. Get Illustrator opening. I think for this first exercise, the size of the page doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go with a letter size for the moment. Just a plain old letter size page and upright. So as you know in this class, I rarely use this page here. It's called the splash page and a lot of programs have it. But I'm in the habit of going right to the File menu. So I'm going to the File menu. I'm going to ask for a new document. And I'm taking letter size 8.5 by 11. It's upright. And I'm going to simply click Create. I want to make sure we get some time on this important subject. We're going to need a couple of things for this, this exercise we're going to do together. First off, I want to mention this. This is called the Gradient Palette. We've not used it together as a group before. So I'm going to ask you to get yours out. The window menu is where you need to go. By the way, there are dialog boxes and palettes. So anytime you open something that looks like this is a dialog box because it has a close button. You can't leave it out. But you notice my swatches float. That's why it's a palette. So all the palettes live under the window menu. So I'm going to the window menu, and what we want, it's in alphabetical order. We want the one that says gradient, not gradient styles, just gradient. I want to mention that one could leave that wherever it showed up, but I do want to point out, if you don't like where it is on your screen, just simply grab a tab. You could pull anything out you want. You could always put it back. So if your gradients landed over here, tucked into this little group, you could just pull it out by clicking on the name and dragging it out. I do want to mention something else. We did this quickly and once or twice though, so I'm not going to spend long on it now. But when you're at the same computer all the time, it's your machine, you know. You generally want to set up Illustrator the perfect way for you. It's very customizable. So you'll notice that I have my Swatches palette here with my color palette, and I have them all joined together. Now, I would also like you to have the same three palettes out. So if you don't see swatches, please go to the window menu. It's an alphabetical order, go down to swatches. Then, if you don't see color, it's just called color, go to the window menu and go to color. Not color guide, not color themes, just color. Until you have these three out, swatches, color, and gradient. I very quickly, I'm going to show you something, and this will be, of course, on the YouTube video for anyone who finds it, you know, important. You know, I could do this with them. Take them by name, drop them right next to each other, get this neat little package. The only reason I won't always do this is I could only see one at a time now. So what I tend to do, if it's 3 palettes I know I'm going to keep on hitting, I'll do it like this. I'm going to drag them out again, and I'm going to dock them. I'm going to take the color palette by the name, come up from the bottom until I see that thick blue line. So now they're not really grouped, they're docked. You know, they're like a boat pulling another boat. I'm going to do the same thing with gradient and drag that up to the bottom until I see that blue line. I just keep dragging up. What I like about it is the whole unit moves. Any of them I want to temporarily fold up, I just double click the name. Right, so things don't get very crowded. And we're going to use these 3 palettes today. So I just want to say for the record, you could organize them however you want. All right, could everybody get the rectangle tool? And I want you to draw a fairly large rectangle for the first experiment. So one thing I want to say to you, when you want to work with a blend, the situation's always different. Like maybe you wanted a flat color. You had orange in there and then you change your mind. You wanted a blend that includes orange. So you'll start with a flat color. So there's really no official way to start a blend. The closest we get is what we're about to try. Could everybody look on the toolbar? And on the toolbar, you'll see this tool here called the gradient tool. And if you're not sure which tool it is, just hit the letter G on your keyboard. It'll take you right to the gradient tool. The gradient tool doesn't usually share a slot. It's got its own. So let's get one thing out of the way. You're going to want this skill for sure. For sure. And there's 2 things you need. The gradient palette at the least, the one that we got from the window menu. Currently looks like this. And you're going to have access to the gradient tool on the left. Does everyone have a rectangle out? All right, so if you've got your gradient tool, I want you to try this with me. Just come over to that rectangle you made and click right inside it. You might have to double click if it doesn't work the first time. Now you're seeing a blend, and the blend goes from white to black, and it's mostly gray, right? But it goes from white, heads toward black, so the middle is gray. I want to point out to you, excuse me, that the colors are represented now on the gradient palette itself, which is kind of cool. I'd like for everybody to join me in a couple quick exercises, right? First off, let's not touch the palette for a moment. Let's not touch this bar. Let's call it the gradient bar. What I'd like you to do is exactly this, just to get a taste with me, right? Exactly this. I want you to start at the top of the rectangle and drag straight down. Now you made your own gradient bar. So that means you have a rectangle, any shape. In fact, it's selected. You got your gradient tool out. You clicked it or double clicked to start it. You got a black and white blend in there. But then you simply drag from side to side. Could you now try from left to right? Now I want you to notice something. When you drag, the first place you clicked was color number 1, which is white. Wherever you let go is color number 2, which is black. What would happen if you dragged from left to right, but only halfway? So the black ends the gradient, and the rest of the object is black. That gives you an incredible amount of freedom. So I'd like you to try a few things with me, right? One more time, drag from top to bottom. So color number 1's on top. If you wanted to reverse those colors, ignore this bar, all right? That's an important idea. Just ignore it. Go right next to it, and this time drag from the bottom to the top. So let's get one thing out of the way then. First click is the first color. Wherever you release is the last color. So even if you did the exact same thing, but you only went up a little ways, the blend is only going up a quarter of my object at most. The rest is the last color. We're going to go much deeper than this, right? Does anybody have any questions so far?
It's not working for me.
It isn't, Annette?
No.
So I want you to do something with me real quickly, all right? Get the black arrow, delete that rectangle, make yourself a new rectangle. And I think I know what's going on. And anyone else who's too shy to admit it's not working. Annette, could you check that the fill box is in front? So at the bottom of the toolbar, remember how we always have to switch the fill and the
Oh.
Since we're
Wait,
talking all about fills now, bring a fill box to the front. So I should have said that,
it's
right?
still not working.
It's still not working. So then, did you find the gradient tool?
Yeah.
And did you click inside the box or double click if necessary?
Yeah, I'm clicking, but it's not doing anything. It has like a circle with the line through it.
Okay, I'm going to turn off my screen share and you're going to turn on yours, okay?
Okay.
I'm turning off my share. Now I'd like you to click screen share. Are you on a Mac or Windows?
Mac.
On a Mac, so the next option should be desktop. Just choose desktop.
Okay.
The same thing was happening with me, but I think I selected the rectangle and then it worked for me. That was just me.
Oh, well, that's a very good point. You always have to select the object you want because there could be 100 objects. So he makes a very good point. All right, so your object is there and it is selected. That's excellent. The fill box is not in front though, so you have to bring the fill box in front. My favorite way is just tapping the X key. So it's still not in front though, right? That's the stroke box that you have in front.
Did I do it?
Now the fill box is in front. Do you see it? The white box is in front of the picture frame.
Yeah.
In it? All right. So now you click inside your shape. Double click if necessary.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go. So I'm not sure which step it was, but I do want to say to everybody, you really do need to be utterly sure what I mean when I say the fill box versus the stroke box. So Annette, are you good?
Yeah.
Great. So you can turn off your screen sharing. I want to
Thank you.
clarify something on my end, so I'm turning mine back on. So guys, this is just language, right? And I realize we're a bunch of, art people here, but I want to be very clear. Could you look at the bottom of my toolbar? I'm going to make this a little bit clearer. Let me get, what is this doing here? So let me just make a point. Here's a flat color. If you look at the bottom of my toolbar, that green box is the fill box. The one that looks like a picture frame is the stroke box. If you ever work on a fill of an object, you must select it. Just like Sean said, you have to select it. You'll see anchor points, right? Then if it's the fill you're interested in, you have to make sure the fill box is in front. You could click either one to bring it to the front, or you could just use the letter X. All right, but I want my gradient. So I've got my gradient tool. I'm clicking here, and look what's happened here. I'm getting the no can do sign. Why is that? Somebody tell me what I'm doing wrong. How come I can't make a gradient?
Your stroke is in front.
Thank you. Right answer. Okay, so now I'm gonna do it. Okay. Guys, don't be shy, you know what I mean? Seriously, we're all new to this, right? Is it working? Does anyone need a hand? What if I promise your grade goes up? If it doesn't work, then everybody's like, mine broke.
I need a bit of help.
Can you say that again, Rebecca?
I need a bit of help because I'm not getting the
right.
the white line like between the square.
Oh yeah. All right. So listen, I'm going to stop my share. I want you to turn yours on. Thanks everyone for being patient. We'll have momentum before you do it. I'm stopping my share. Rebecca,
I'm doing it on my laptop, and I'm
I see you're taking my class on a phone, but you're working on a laptop.
Yeah, I'm taking it on my iPad.
Gotcha. So that means I'm not going to be able to help other than guessing. So can I ask you, Rebecca, is that necessary? I mean, in the future, can you take the class and use Illustrator on the same device?
Yeah.
So I think next time I'm going to ask you to do that because otherwise you can't show me what you're doing. But I could guess. So I want to ask you a question. Is the blend showing up? Are you actually seeing the blend or you're not seeing a blend at all?
Yeah, I'm seeing a blend.
But you're not seeing that weird bar, right? You're not seeing this bar?
Yeah.
So here's my hunch. If the blend is showing up but you're not seeing the bar, let's take a quick look in Illustrator at the View menu. And I want to see if there's something there that might be turned off. You know, we're not going to use that bar too much, but we are going to use it. So I just need, Can I ask you something about this? Does, under the View menu, does yours say hide bounding box? No, that wouldn't be it. Never mind. I take that back.
Yeah, it's not.
This is the one. This is it. Can you go to the View menu and make sure yours says Show Gradient Annotator? So this is how it looks without it. I'm going to the View menu and now I'm doing Show Gradient Annotator and it shows up. Any luck,
Uh,
Rebecca?
I'm looking for the show great. Oh,
So that object needs to be selected.
um,
So from the view menu in Illustrator, make sure you're still in Illustrator,
yeah,
and then the view menu will say
yeah. It's on, but I'm still not seeing the white line.
this white bar. So can I ask you something, Rebecca? Are you still
Yeah.
able to drag and see the gradient change like that?
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
All right.
there
So
we go.
listen, I hate to say this to you, but I can't. You got it? Oh, great.
Yeah, I
So
just
listen,
got it.
folks, everybody, I do see the virtue why people like having two devices, but you know, the teacher that is completely disabled if you're not on one machine. I'll let you make that choice yourself in the future, but screen sharing, sometimes I could solve stuff in a minute. All right, folks, listen, I want to gain some momentum, right? Because this is a fascinating subject and we haven't scratched it yet. So, could everybody join me just one more time? I want to, I want to make sure that we're together. If you've got a box with a gradient in it, the fill box,
Excuse me, Professor.
yes.
We can't see your screen.
Oh, really? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated. Here we go. Give me a minute. Any sign there? All right. Are you seeing me again?
Looks good.
Great. All right, folks, let's just start this over. Could everybody delete that box? Just delete it. I'd like you to make a new rectangle. And this time I'd like you to choose a flat swatch, any color. So imagine you had a flat color in there, you change your mind, you want to see how a blend would behave, you want more sense of light perhaps or atmosphere, right? So then you got your object, it's selected, right? Step one, make sure it's selected. Step two, make sure the fill box is in front. So I keep going over that, right? And I want to make sure everyone's crystal clear, not gray, but crystal clear. The one that looks like a frame is the stroke color, it's the outline. We're talking about the fill color, the one that doesn't look like a frame. I'd like you to get the gradient tool though, and click right on your rectangle and see if it turns into a black and white gradient. So that's where it all begins. Naturally, we want to make our own and we want to position them exactly. So once you've got your object selected, you got a gradient in it, you've got the fill box in front, right? The gradient tool allows you to choose where the color begins and ends. I'd like you to set it up so that white starts in the top left corner and black finishes it in the bottom right. In other words, a diagonal. So I'm going to start here, press and drag. In this version of Illustrator, it actually shows the gradient emerge. And if I drag all the way to the opposite side, that's where black is. Now to make sure you're getting the hang of it, I want a diagonal going the opposite way. I want that white in the top right corner now. And the black right opposed to it in the bottom left. So wherever color one goes, that's where you begin. You click and press, and then you drag it wherever you want it to go. Here's a diagonal this way. Now I want to make a small point now that we're starting to get the hang of it. What if you wanted to leave some of the black out? So what I'm talking about now is I want it white on top, just straight, horizontal white, but I don't want all the black in there. Watch this. So I start up here and I press and drag, but if I keep going, the black is thinking it's outside of the box. So all I'm left with is the gray here and the white, a much more subtle gradient. All right, now we need to move ahead, so I want you to try something with me right away. And I need everyone to make sure it's exactly the same as mine, because we're not ready to improvise just yet. I'd like for you to drag from the left edge of your box to the right edge of your box with the gradient tool. Now, it gets much more interesting when you're using your own colors, so let's get busy with that. There's two ways to do it. I want to start with that bar that's there. So again, if anyone doesn't see this whitish bar, right, as we just saw moments ago, if you're not seeing it, it's probably this. The view menu might have this say, if it says show here, it means it's not currently showing. You know, if yours says hide gradient annotator, you're already right. You're good. You know, because if I click it now, I just hit it. I'm going to go back. to show. So again, selected object, fill color in front, that feature is usually on by default. All right, did you drag from the left edge to the right edge? I want to show you how you work with color, and it's very intuitive, except for one small little details. I'd like you to bring your mouse right to that bar. Now you'll notice there's a big white circle on the left and a black one on the right. I want you to click the white one, or I should say double click it. Now the only problem with this particular gradient is it thinks you're using one ink. You're just asking about how much black ink. But we want 4. We want the whole Cmyk. So if you're seeing one slider, could you join me in this maneuver? In the top right corner of the little palette that showed up is a tiny menu. So it's 3 little lines, what we sometimes call a hamburger menu, right? I want you to click that menu and choose Cmyk. Ah, now it looks exactly the same as the color palette. So it's interesting, right? We spent some time on the color palette twice before because I knew it was going to be a big player. So now what I want you to do is pick any color you want, either from the spectrum bar at the bottom or from the sliders. So you could actually adjust them to get the exact color that you want for that first color. So I'm going something in, generally kind of yellow, right? But I see on the 4 sliders variations. That's it with a little black. Here it is with a little less yellow. I can make it a little bit more orangey, right? So it's up to you what you choose. Now, when you like the color you have for color number 1, hit return or enter to accept it. Now, what we want is we want to change color number 2. So you look at that white bar, you find the black circle and double click it. Now, if you get the same problem, all right, that it's giving you one ink, you do have to remember the fix. You come up to that tiny menu and choose Cmyk. Now again, you could either start by using sliders if you like to mix colors from scratch, or you could start down here. I'm going to go with a blue. And now I'm thinking, what kind of blue do I want? Do I want it to be a little less cyan or a little more cyan? Do I want to head toward purple by adding a little bit of magenta to it? If I go all the way, I'm in purple land. I'm going to back off a bit. And again, this is where color theory is going to kick in. I want to point out that while you're mixing the color in that object, the blend, the gradient, you could change your mind at any point in time about its orientation. Remember, we drag from left to right, but at any point you could change your mind. Could everybody move that gradient so it starts on top and ends on the bottom? So all you do is go to the top of the object and press and drag down to reorient it. You could change your mind as often as you want. How's this going so far?
Wait, can you show how you put 2 colors in there again?
Yes. Yeah. Look, I'm going to do this one more time. And if you're feeling like, oh, Ira, I got it, then you stay where you are. Just give me a minute. I want to answer Rachel's question because getting the foundation right has endless value. So here's the idea. You have a brand new drawing, could be somebody's t-shirt, right? Here it's just a rectangle. Let's say you had a flat color in there. So make sure the object's selected. And indeed, if you just drew it, it's going to be selected. Otherwise, get the black arrow. Short, select it. Check the fill and stroke box. You guys have to do that all the time, right? You're going to be using fills more often than you're going to use strokes. So I'm going to make sure the fill box is in front. Then you get the gradient tool. To start a gradient by using the gradient tool, right? That's the letter G on the keyboard to get there fast. You come over and click right inside your selected object. Remember, you selected it, you brought the fill box in front, then you simply click inside. Now I want to mention, first off, Rachel, did it work?
No, I know how to use the gradient. I was just curious how you got 2 colors in there.
Got it. We're going to get even more too. So what happens when you click with the gradient tool, just to be fair, if you've been working for a while, it gives you the last gradient you used, right? If you just sat down, it gives you black and white. Truly, the black and white gradient is the hardest one to work with. So I wish they'd choose a different one. It's the only one where you have to keep switching to Cmyk. But again, What I want to do is a little bit further. Could everybody go back to color 1 just to warm up on this a little bit further? I want you to double click on color number 1 right here. And I'd like you to pick a completely different color, right? So I'm going to start with a red this time. And again, if you don't like that red, you could explore the reds that are on the bar that shows up. The top is pale, the bottom is dark. Or you could use the sliders yourself. A rich red's going to have a lot of magenta. It'll have less of the other colors. It really depends what kind of red you're after. All right, when you like it, hit return or enter. I'd like you to go to the second color and double click it. I'd like you to pick a completely different color for that side. And again, you could do it all from down here, possibly top edge is pale, the low edge is dark. But very often I'll click down here and then I'll modify it by using the sliders. And then hit return or enter. How do you add a color? Becomes the next issue. To add a color, you go to the gradient bar, and right beneath it, right along the edge, the lower edge, if you bring your cursor right to that edge, you'll see a plus sign. You could click right there. These are called color stops. You just added the third color stop. And temporarily, it is the color that just happened to be there. But if you double click it, you could add a new color. Now, if you missed that, I'm going to do it again. The object selected, the fill box is in front. You've got the gradient tool already selected. So selected object, fill box in front, and the gradient tool. You come beneath the bar wherever you want to place your new color and click once. That gives you the color stop. To modify it, you double click it and give it any color you want. How's this going, all right? Don't be shy, right? Because you're all going to need this really rather a lot. Rather a lot. I have to say, when the third project gets off the ground, you're going to need a double lot. So I want to make sure we hit it hard. I'd like for everybody to add a fourth color on your own. Now, while you're doing it, I just want to say a couple things. How many colors can you use? And is there any kind of issues that we should look out for? So here's the kind of thing, I've never seen the maximum number of colors. So it's a big, big number, right? I want to say that. But I want to say, other than that, it's rare that you're going to want a lot of colors. Just a few colors are likely. Whatever room you're sitting in now, look at a wall and notice it's a gradient. You just don't see flat colors in the real world unless a photographer lit it to be perfectly flat, which would take numerous lights to make sure that it was evenly lit. But in the real world, it's your window, it's one lamp or two lamps, and the light's hitting your wall or any object there unevenly, which means everything is a gradient, just about, in the universe, which is food for thought, right? So I'm going to add myself another color. I'm choosing a spot, double click it, and I'm adding color there. And I could adjust it if I want. Okay, what else can you do? So I want to remind you that we could change the orientation, and just to make sure that becomes second nature, let's do it. I just went from left to right earlier. I want to go from bottom to top now. So you got the gradient tool already. You should be able to just come to the bottom of your box and drag upward. Okay, that's interesting enough. But what else can we do? Can we actually move the individual colors around? So I want to show you the next thing. After you've decided how you want it oriented, is it going from corner to corner, or is it going from side to side? I just asked for people to go from the bottom up. Okay, I'm going to do that too. But look what the separate sliders do, the separate circles, I should say. If I thought, I need more of this blue, I could drag the blue further down. If it gets too close to the next color, though, it doesn't blend. It's more of a stripe. But if I want it to blend, I'll just have to move the yellow down. So what's going on now is you're not moving the whole gradient anymore. You're moving the parts. So I'd like for you to notice that if you have 4 colors, you could move any of them to change the look of the gradient. Experiment with that a little bit. Now, these are the things I want you to look out for. When two colors get really close, they have less of a smooth gradient. That's not always bad, though. You know, sometimes that's what you want. They start to get a sharp line. If they're right over each other, you get a completely sharp line, which is not what the tool was made for, but it might have some value. It will also confuse you a lot, because if I bring this over the yellow, I see this cool effect, but where'd my yellow go? Oh no, very confusing. I'd have to move one away to see that I hit it. I want to say a little bit about those strange little diamonds. You notice little diamonds that are showing up, those that are in between the circles? That's much more sophisticated. And I want to tell you something about it. I ignored it for years. Really for years. And I really regretted it once I started to use it. So you'll find that it could solve a lot of problems. I want to show you what they do. So while each of the color stops moves that color entirely, the diamond moves the 50% mark. So hear this out. If this is blue and this is yellow, the diamond represents where the two colors are 50-50. So if I move it up, yellow got more of that space. I didn't really move the yellow, I kind of extended it. If I take the diamond down, blue gets more of the space, in my case. And I want to say something in the way of sincere advice. Make believe I'm not your teacher right now. I'm your favorite uncle. This is what I would say. Get a few of these features. You don't need them all. You have to be careful dragging around and making your own colors, right? But in terms of what you do once the gradient's there, whether you move the circle or the diamond, play with it when you have a chance and you'll be in good shape. I want everybody to join me though on another few things. Could everyone drag from left to right? We're starting using the same gradient, but we're going from left to right. I would like you all to add one more color. So now that you know a little bit more, you know it does matter where you put it. Do I want it between these two colors, between these two, or between these? If you currently have 4 colors, then there's 3 different regions you could choose. I'd like you to add a color wherever you feel like. So you go right up to the edge, right underneath the bar. You'll see a little plus sign usually. Click. That gave you a color stop. Now to assign the color, you double click it. And just give it whatever you want to give it. The question starts becoming at this stage is how do I get rid of a color? Because we made a big mess. And I intentionally invited a mess, right? So to get rid of a color, right, you choose the circle, right? They're called color stops, and drag south. Drag straight down. You pluck it right off the gradient. So I'm going to take the yellow out. I drag it down. I'm going to take the green out. I press on it. I drag it down. I could see some things I'd like to change, but I just want to make sure. Is it clear how to add and take away colors? Right? Remember, I really don't mind questions. I hope that shows. I really don't mind. I had so many questions from my Illustrator teacher. At first, she was a little afraid of me because I asked so many questions. But I got the hang of it, you know, and then she was very, very supportive.
Could you repeat how to take away color?
Yeah, sure. So what you do is you take the color you no longer want and you press on it and drag it down. And I want to point out though that all this means that you have the gradient tool already. So, you know, if you leave the tool, you can't do any of those things. No problem, just go back and get the tool again. So you pick a color you don't want, press on it and drag it straight down. Did that work, Annette?
Yeah.
Great. All right, we're all good? I want to show you just a couple quick things that go with this, right? So let's just start over. I want to take this a slightly different direction. Can everyone delete this object? Now, folks, I want to show you something very practical using this tool. I want to make a 3-dimensional object by using light and shadow. And I want to make it a fairly complex object because light and shadow behaves differently inside of an object if it's hollow than it does on the outside. So we're going to make a big bowl, like a big urn kind of substantial bowl. We're going to make our own gradient and see how we would make it imitate light and shadow. So could everybody join me? Make sure you cleared your screen. And I'd like you to find the Ellipse tool. So it's hiding underneath your rectangle tool. So go to the toolbar, you probably have to press on that to find the Ellipse tool. Now what I'm looking for at first is just a circle. Now I don't mind if you get more elliptical. You know, it's going to look like a rain barrel. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Something like this is probably going to work. Now I want to point out a few things before we actually turn it into an urn. One, is the black and white gradient really the best way to start? You know, I'm not sure that it is. The thing I don't like about it is you have to keep switching to Cmyk. The other gradient's already in Cmyk. I want to show you what I mean. If you look at your Swatches palette, so again, guys, I'm repeating myself, make sure the object's still selected and that the fill box is in front. You always have to look down here to know what you're doing. Never guess. You're working on fills, you're not talking about line, the fill box has to be in front. All right. But then I want you to look at the Swatches palette. So this is how we started last time. This is the same black and white, but this one here is yellow to orange. Now I want to try this one instead for a minute. I want to be blunt. I usually pick the yellow to orange gradient to start, and I want to tell you why. I don't like that it has too many colors, so that's a negative, more for me to throw out. But I do like that they're all Cmyk and none of them are transparent. So I know exactly what I'm looking at. You know, straight up color I could mix and play with. So we're going to work with this one instead now. Thing is, if your fill box is in front and you look over here at the gradient palette, you'll notice the gradient palette also shows you the colors. And it's showing you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors. Now this palette acts very much the same as this bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also, I could delete colors from here or from here. So we're going to be comparing these two pretty soon. But what I want you to do is delete all the colors except for the first and last. So I want the outside colors preserved, right? And I want all the ones in the middle thrown out. I'm trying to make a couple of points. One, a simple gradient is a better gradient most of the time. They'll print better, they'll give you more control, and you could make more magic that way than a mess. Secondly, this gradient had unnecessary colors. I could have made the same gradient with 2 colors and just controlled it by how I drag the bar around. But for our goal, we need something completely different. Did everyone make sure you have 2 colors left? By the way, you couldn't throw those out because a gradient insists that you have 2 at least, right? Makes sense, right? One blending into another one. So what we need though is one to be super duper light and one to be super duper dark. Now, I want you to bear with me for a minute before you choose. You know when you're a kid and you know, you're like, hey, oh, my favorite ball is the red ball. You know, and it's like the kid never thinks about, well, if that ball is in a blue room, it's not very red. It's sort of a purple ball. You know, if you take the same red ball and put it in a yellow room, I'm talking really yellow, all the walls, the ceiling, the floor, that red ball is going to look orange. There's very little you could do about it. Light mixes color naturally. So I want you to imagine the color of the urn before you choose light and dark. You know, like if it's a green urn, what is the light really? Is it green mixed with white? Probably not. Is it yellowish? It might be, especially if it's strong sunlight. You know, how do you lighten a green object? I don't know. So we're going to have to try some things. So I've got this one down. I got 2 colors, and I'm asking you to double click the light side. Now, the choice is yours, right? But I don't want you to guess. What color is the bowl going to be? And now you're choosing the light side of it. So maybe I'm going to go with that kind of green. You know, a light kind of green that has a lot of yellow in it. We'll find out. When you think you took a good guess, hit return or enter. I want you to go to the other side. Now, in my case, I'm working on a green bowl. So the other side naturally has to be green. But what I want is a very, very dark green. So I keep repeating this subtle thing because it's hard to see. The lowest edge of this area is dark. It's almost black. The top edge is white. I could use that feature to get my dark green. Or I could just use the sliders and figure out how do you darken a green. Two common ways is to add the opposite color. Magenta is what we've got. Gives you an earthy dark color. Or I could just add black. Or I could add both. And hit return when you're ready. If you think the light side's not light enough, you could change it by double-clicking it again. Or you could move the diamond between them. That's the 50% marker. Because we do want the color to go straight across. Otherwise, I might drag a different kind of bar. Right? But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with side to side the way we started. And I might move the diamond around. Okay, now we're not nearly done, right? But here's the one thing I need for you to check. You do need two colors only for this to work. And one has to be very light and one has to be very dark. Okay, I want to talk to you about the inside of the bowl. So look what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the oval tool again. And this time I'm going to drag an oval over the first one. Then I'm going to get the black arrow to help me place it and to size it. Now it's starting to look dimensional, but it's going to get a lot better than this. So I just want to invite you to explore that. Now clearly we're not making the same bowl here, right? The mouth is going to be a different size. The whole feeling of it is going to be a different size. Sorry to be clicking around and trying to find a place to put everyone's face while I'm doing the demo. So you notice how the black arrow is very helpful, right? You could move that second oval around, but you could also use that bounding box feature, those handles, to make it narrow or wide. Hey, I got a quick question for you. On occasion, people accidentally turn off the bounding box and they don't get these handles. And they're like, hey, I want to change the width, but I can't, right? So I just want to point out, if you're not seeing those handles with the black arrow, go to the view menu. Yours probably says show bounding box now, meaning it's hidden. I'm turning mine back on. This is just really useful feature. I use it constantly. You know, by the way, if I started to lift off the ground for an aerial view, right, I would have to do exactly this. I'm looking down at the bowl, right? Now I'm looking across the bowl. And if I brought my face way low, it would look more like that. You know, of course, I'd have to drop it down. But right now, I just want you to get what you're comfortable with. Okay, too much talk. Make sure that the new oval is selected, the fill box is in front, and please go get the gradient tool. This is about light and shadow now. I want to show you something really cool. Watch this. I could tell that left to right is light to dark because the gradient palette's next to me and it's showing it clear as a bell. First color is light, but I want them reversed. So the only way to do that is to get the gradient tool and drag the opposite way. So I'm going to go from right to left. See, the original one was from left to right. It imitated the bowl itself. I'm inside the bowl, and the light's going to respond the opposite way. I'm going to prove something to you, and then I'm going to explain it. I'm turning my strokes off to make a point. That's seriously dimensional. So, point number one. The inner gradient goes in the opposite direction. That's the basic point, right? I want to explain why. And I think a lot of you guys are familiar with it, but it helps to get really clear. You know when you're trying to photograph someone and the sun is behind them? Have you ever tried that? Right? It just never works. They turn black. They become a silhouette, right? So with the sun behind them, the sun doesn't make it in front of them, right? They're in shadow. Whoever's standing on the opposite side would see it. Take a look at this for a minute. So in my example, the sun would be about here, right? The light's coming this way. So this side, think of just the outside of the bowl, gets hit with light. No surprise if the sun's coming here, like imagine like, here's the sun. Right? So the light's coming here, it hits the left side of my bowl. The opposite side's naturally in shadow, no surprise. But the sun then would go over the wall and hit the inside here. That's why the opposite side gets the light. The sun can't really get in here, that has to be in shadow. You know, imagine a string running from the sun into the bowl, straight line. So that means the light hits inside on the opposite edge. I want to make a small point about it, and I'm going to let it go. This is not bowl drawing class or Ira's bowl demonstration. It's just getting into light and shadow, getting into it, really thinking it, getting to feel it. And I really hope your first couple of years at FIT include lots of things that involve light and shadow all across the board. The more you think about it, stare at it, deal with it, the more natural you'll become working with objects in space, because they're all built of light and shadow. I would like you to take the strokes off. So if yours looks like this, let me just catch up with you for a minute. You got little black lines interrupting your beautiful color. So I'm going to ask you to select both shapes. One easy way to do it is to get the black arrow, press and drag from nearby. Just make sure you touch both ovals. Right? And as long as they're both touched, they'll both be selected. To get rid of the stroke, you do have to go to the toolbar at the very bottom. Make sure the stroke box is in front this time. Or in other words, that's called giving focus. We're focusing on the stroke now. So I selected my objects, brought the stroke box in the front. I'm way down here in the lower left. And then I click color of none. Color of none lives down here. It looks like no smoking. It lives on the swatches, it lives on the color palette, it lives anywhere colors involved. You can click any of them to get rid of your stroke. And you could appreciate the sense of light. I want to do one more thing, but before I do, was it easy to get rid of the strokes? So I want everyone to really start thinking about when you want line and when you don't. We don't have to agree on the answer, but we do have to agree that the question matters, right? I'd like you to put a big rectangle over your bowl. So switching back to the rectangle tool now. So it shares that slot with a few shapes, the ellipse and the rectangle. And I want you to just sort of hide it. Just put a big box right over it. If you remember how to send an object back, right? So we're on one layer, but we want to send it to the back of that layer, please do it. Can anyone shout it out? How do I send that rectangle behind the others?
Layers.
Without layers, though. Good
Oh.
answer,
It's
but how do you do it
like
without layers?
Control Shift
shift and the black.
accurate.
Ooh, the combined answer was perfect. So I just want to say, whoever said shift there, where are you? Who added shift?
Oh, I think I said shift.
You both did. So I got to say that means you're ahead of the game. I want to mention something. Command left bracket. We used a lot at the beginning of the semester. So those are the two bracket keys. They're next to the letter P on the keyboard. So command left bracket, unless you're on Windows, control left bracket. Now here's the thing. That goes back one step. Right? So that's not helping me. So two very smart people here said, use shift also. Command shift left bracket means go all the way to the back of your layer. You know, Christine, I want to say a quick word to you. I'm glad you're into layers. Very glad, because I'm going to have to force the class to embrace layers at some point. But you can't really have a layer for every object. You know, a simple face is like 20 parts. You'd have 20 layers just to make a face. So if that face was part of a crowd, you'd really be doomed, you know? So sometimes one really has to stay on a layer, but move things forward or back behind each other. And the bracket trick becomes helpful.
I couldn't figure out how to do that. The command shift brackets.
So are you finding the brackets that are next to the letter P?
Yes.
So can I just show you something? I want to make a point. I'm going to bring that back to the front for a minute, right? The program counts. So like if you've made shapes even out here, it's including those, right? So frankly, if I have a lot of shapes, thing run, it's going to take me a long time without the shift key before it starts making it back there. You know, because it's even counting these that are nowhere nearby. So I just want to mention that it's literally going one by one. It's counting the objects. Now, Christine, for you, I'd say make sure the object's selected. That's the critical thing, right? Again, it's Command Shift, both held down with one hand, Command and Shift at once, and then you tap left bracket, and then it should go all the way to the back. There you go. Right. Guys, you know one thing I love about FIT? You guys actually have the nerve to ask questions. I work at another school where there seems to be a social rule among students that it's not cool to ask. And so they all stare at me. And the other thing, the other rule that's terrible, it's not cool to smile. You can't ask questions, you can't smile. You have to think the teacher that, make the teacher believe you're the living dead. It's very hard to teach zombies, especially art. So thank you for being the warm bunch that you are. Anyway, I want to say a little bit about the object in the back. So it adopted the gradient that you already had. And I'm not saying I'm going to do that too often, but it is worth looking at because, gosh, is there a lot of atmosphere. I want to point out something though. Most photographers wouldn't let the background show me light behind the light side of an object. So I'm talking about a photography trick right now, but I want to show you how it would look in Illustrator. When you're selling a product, you know, I'm holding up my Duracell battery, you know, I want that product to be super clear. I don't want it lost in atmosphere. So what they do in that case, right, is this. They make sure the background's selected. I get the gradient tool, and I'm going to explore how to get dark behind the light object. Ooh, I didn't bring the fill box to the front. So I select the background, bring the fill box to the front. Then the gradient tool can do its magic. And I'm going to say, maybe I want the light on this side. So I got to point out, they're both good. Like this is very atmospheric, right? Lots of air, which is sort of beautiful. But if I really have to show off the bowl, I would want the dark behind the light side of the bowl. Right? It's nuanced kind of thing. It's all about where the light goes. And honestly, if you're the kind of artist who likes to guess a lot, why not guess then? You know, just select it, get the fill box in front, and see what else might happen. You know, maybe I'm missing some magic by being too logical. That's an interesting look. All right. So we could tell blends make light, they make light and shadow makes dimension and atmosphere. So it's a powerful chain of events. Any questions so far? I want to do something else, folks. So if you want to keep yours for some reason, open up a new document with me. All right, I'm going to have to pick up the pace a little bit. File menu, new. Let's just use the same size document. So just click create. Now, I want to talk about radial gradients. Now, what's interesting is there's only two kinds of gradient. One is linear, right? And I want to remind you very quickly about that. So let's just put a rectangle down. I'm going to make a wide rectangle this time. Since we're getting the hang of this, bring the fill box to the front if it isn't there already. That's always critical. And then I'd like you to go to your swatches and choose that same yellow and orange gradient. Now, let's go over a couple things. I need the gradient palette out. So if you lost it, right, somehow, get it again, right? They're all under the window menu. I'd like you to throw out the inside colors. We just want the two on the outside. Now, I want to make a point about what I mean by radial, right? It means the first color just lines up this way. There's no curve in the gradient. Now, what if you did want it to be a curved gradient? Now look, folks, I just want to be fair. There are two newish gradient tools out there that we're going to try later this semester. I'm talking about the most traditional gradient tool right now. If you want to try a radial gradient, you can't do it from just the tool. So far, everything we've done, we didn't need the gradient palette. We needed the tool, but we didn't really need this palette. I made you have it out so you get to know what it looks like. When do you actually need it? Well, when you want to switch the gradient type. So check these out. It says type. This is linear, the most popular. This is radial, the next most popular. And this last one there is kind of weird. I don't have much to say about it. I want to go to that next one, the one in the middle. Now you see it radiates out. So color number 1 was yellow. So now that's in the middle, and all the blends move outward to the outer edge. So what I'd like for you to try now is this. Let's stay in radial for a minute. With the gradient tool, which you probably have selected, press anywhere you want and drag. Just watch what happens. So wherever you pressed, placed color number 1. And wherever you drag, places the last color. And if you don't drag all the way, no problem. The rest of the shape is the last color. So it's all about where you start and where you end. And you can still use the features you learned about to change it. All right, I want to do something cooler though. Could everyone get the black arrow and delete that object? I'd like for you to make a circle. So we're going to have to find the ellipse tool again. If you want a perfect circle, hold down Shift and make yourself a fair-sized circle. All right, we want a couple things. We want to make sure it's radial. We only want 2 colors. And again, we want a very light color and a very dark color. So right now it's showing you the last gradient you had, and that's fine, right? So what I want you to do then is get the gradient tool. You'll see these circles. You could drag yourself a new bar, just ignore the old one. Just drag from one edge to the other edge. So one point I want to make is that gradient tool, the one on the toolbar, I find it much easier just to keep dragging a new bar than mess with the one that just showed up. You know, that had nothing to do with my choice. So I'd rather make a choice and just drag a new one. I'd like you to change the colors. One super light, one super dark. So I'm going to imagine a blue object this time, a blue ball. Not a bowl, just a ball. So I'm going to take this one, first color stop, and I'm going to double click it. And I'm going to find myself a light blue. I hit return on a Mac, enter on Windows. I'm going to go to the second color, double click it. And since I want a simple blue ball, I am actually going to pick another blue, just a darker one. And I want it to be quite dark, so I'm going to, pull out whatever tricks I can. Now the thing about it is, it might not look as round as we want until you get the colors in place. You have a rough idea what you're dealing with, and then you could start experiments like this. You got your 2 colors, you're not yet sure of them, but they're good enough. You got your gradient tool. Well, a ball would not have the light right on the edge. So I'm going to make a new gradient bar. I'm going to say the light's going to hit it a little in from the edge. And I'm dragging now, watching the way the shadow appears until I'm satisfied with it. So you could tell you're going to be able to create all different kinds of light. Right now, I want you to get a believable sphere. Now, I'm going to have to move on to a different subject soon. We're going to probably review this, but I would also like you to get a rectangle behind it. So once you've got a reasonable sphere, get your rectangle tool out. I'm going to use Command left bracket or Command Shift left bracket. I'm taking my strokes off. I'm not forcing you to do it, though color's a little bit more fun sometimes without the stroke. You can see I've got a real lot of atmosphere, right? Now, if these are radial gradients, it's not always obvious which you need. We just made a bowl before, and we didn't use radial, and it looked very, very round. not always obvious. You know, I could have done this with radial, but I've done it many times, and I've noticed the linear seems to behave better in that case. This, I clearly need radial. So it's a spherical object. What else am I going to do? Either one that you want to work on, simply select it, make sure the fill box is in front, and then you could explore the gradient in that selected object. I got a very spacey kind of look going here. How are we doing today? Am I going too slow? Going all right? All right. So folks, I want you to imagine, we don't have time to spend all day on the grading tool. I have to move forward. But here's my arm, right? And if you're going to try to do this extreme light and shadow that you're seeing on my arm right now, it would be a bit of a challenge, you know? Like, this might not even be the best tool for it. So we're going to learn others, right? But I could divide it, make an upper arm, you know, maybe use one of these wrinkles to decide on that edge and make this a separate object. In which case, I would do light on the far side, shadow on this side, right? On the lower arm, I'm not necessarily the same, but I can make separate decisions. I'd probably draw the folds on top of it, right? So it's going to be a lot of blends no matter what you look at. I'm extremely blended right now, as well as all of you when you look around the room at your faces, you know, whether it's electric light or windows or whatever. Okay, I think I went overboard. I have to take a quick look at my own handout. Oh, I actually have a printout today. Remember printouts? Oh, anyway. Pen tool, we're supposed to start quite a while ago. I want to move into the pen tool right now. So, you know, I want to say something to you. I want to talk about the pen tool, but I also want to talk about the pencil. And they're kind of like opposite sides of the program. Your teachers are mostly going to say, pen tool, pen tool, pen tool. Really, the culture for some reason is obsessed with this one tool. I myself, though, use them both a lot. And I was the art director for a greeting card company. And I got to draw a lot of the cards myself. I was using the pencil tool a lot. So what's the real difference, really? The pencil tool invites a hand-drawn kind of looser style. Look, Illustrator's not the loosest program, but the pencil tool, say, won't offer perfect curves, right? So the pen tool will. So when you need perfect curves and perfect straight lines, it's got to be the pen tool. I want to compare them for a minute. So I'm going to ask everybody to join me. Let's go back into Illustrator, and I'd like you to open up another document, right? File, menu, new. Sticking with the same size right now, let's click create. This is not even on today's handout. Oh, guys, listen, can you let me get my power cord? I notice I'm dangerously low because I moved rooms and I forgot to bring my cord. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay. I want to take a quick pencil tool detour because there's something about the pencil tool I think I never showed you, and it's not commonly known, but it does make the tool a lot more useful. So I'm going to do that quickly. So you got a blank document in front of you, everybody? All right. Now, the pencil tool itself hides in this version of Illustrator. So if it's not out, you might be seeing the shaper tool, which I don't use much. That's Shift N to find it. But if I press on it, I'll see the plain old pencil, right? I'm kind of wondering if I was in the wrong tool and I just hit N, would it get it for me? Yes, it would. So you could just tap the letter N and get the pencil tool. All right. Now, I want to show you something. One, I'd like you to double click the tool. Now this is kind of weird. We didn't do this before, right? So I want you to just simply double click right on that tool in the toolbar. This is where the tool options are. Many tools have tool options, not every one. And there's something like, I don't know, maybe 80 tools on the toolbar actually in total, right? Some of them have the options. So you have to find the pencil and literally double click right on it. All right, you see this slider here? This is the only thing I want to talk about right now. This is all cool stuff, really. But right now I want to talk about the Fidelity Slider. I'd like you to bring it all the way to the left. Now what this means is you get no assistance. The pencil tool will just draw the way you draw. So if you had loads of coffee and you're drawing like this, you know, that's what you get, right? There's no assistance. Just try it. Make a nervous line if you could. By the way, there's an illustrator I love called Bleckman, and his line's very nervous line, very nervous. Everyone depends on that. He couldn't use what's called assistance or fidelity because it would ruin his look. So I'm going to delete that. I want you to go back and double click that tool, and I want you to go to the opposite side, smooth. That's the smoothest the tool is going to get, right? Click OK. And even if you draw that nervous line, it smoothed it out. So I want to show you why that matters. When I'm drawing a head, right, and I'm using my touchpad right now, I'm sitting on a mattress, to be blunt, very uncomfortable, really. It's better for napping, right? Look what happens when I let go. Can you tell that it's smoother than it was before? Now remember, the tool, the pencil tool, always lets you do this. You could always go to the selected line and readjust it, right? As long as it's selected, I could keep making changes. The only problem with a line set to that smooth is sometimes I can't get specific angles. You know, so if I'm trying to make an angle that smooths out too much, I might just double click the tool at any point and reduce the amount of smoothing. So I do want to give you a little bit of advice because I don't have time to go into detail over this particular one, right? I usually set mine to 3/4, just to be blunt. It gives me a little assistance without completely altering what I'm drawing, just enough assistance. So this is very, very helpful. So if you were going to draw something with this tool, I just want to remind you of a couple little things. Even if you make a messy, goofy looking drawing like this one, right? You can go back and get increasingly elegant as you find out what it is that you really want, step by step. And right now I'm set to 3/4 smooth, so it's giving me smooth lines that look quite a bit like the pen tool drew them. And I'm discovering what I want out of it as I go. Does anybody have any questions that are about the pencil tool? So I want to drop that. I just want to say something to you quickly since we probably won't return to that subject. The pencil tool is great. I want to give you an idea. So I got a project from McGraw-Hill. They needed a bunch of maps for these books for kids. And they wanted kid-friendly maps that fit the stories. But obviously, I don't have planet Earth memorized. So I ran out and I got an adult book of maps, an atlas. And I could look up any place they needed. I scanned those maps. And when they needed a given country, I brought the scan in. We're going to be playing with that idea soon enough. And I locked my layer. And on a new layer, I redrew the map for kids. So I thought of ways to make it fun, playful, simple, all the things a kid would want. I got my information from the map, the mature, and then I made my kid-friendly version. And I did a lot of that with the pencil tool, because I wanted a loose look. When you need a tight look, a specific look, it's all about the pen tool. We're going to need it a lot this semester, so I want to go to the pen tool right now. Let's do, let me just think for a second. Should we break first? Let's just do a couple pen tool exercises first. Could you clear your page So I suggest Command A or Control A on Windows just to select everything on that page and delete it. You know, guys, actually, now that I think about it, I think we need a wide page, right? So let's just open up a new page together. Could everybody do File Menu New? Now, 8.5 by 11 is fine, but I want the numbers switched. So I'm going to use this little feature here called Landscape. So I get 11-inch wide. I just want a horizontal page. I'm not feeling picky about it. Letter size, but I click this little guy to switch them. 11-inch wide, 8.5 tall. All right, let's click Create. I'd like you to turn your rulers on. You could do that two ways. Rulers are always under the View menu. So if you're ever lost in a program, you can go right to the View menu. But also, most programs let you do Command R or Control R if you prefer shortcuts. All right. I'm interested in the ruler on top. So again, that's View menu, Rulers. Somewhere in there. Yeah, they are, Rulers. But I do prefer Command R. All right. I want you to press on the top ruler and drag a guide down. You could drop it, you know, maybe a third of the way down, half. No more than that, though. Hope you guys could see my guide. I want to quickly go over two exercises. I think we tried them both, but I'm not utterly sure that we tried the latter. I want to start with the easy one. The first exercise was called Continuous Curve, and it gives you a chance to really get a hang of the pen tool. And even if I'm being repetitive, I'd like you to give me your complete focus. All right. First steps with the pen tool. Now, I'm going to share tricks with you that are hard to learn elsewhere. They're not in every book, and they're not well represented on YouTube, but they're going to make you like this tool more. So I'm going to ask you to embrace these secrets of the pen tool. All right, here we go. Secret one. Click the wide arrow, and then go back to the pen tool. Click the wide arrow and go back to the pen tool. That seems so weird. It's like pick up the hammer and put it back down. But the reason I'm asking you that is if you do that, the Command key or the Control key, if you're on Windows, will give you the wide arrow while drawing with the pen tool. So you're drawing with the pen tool, you need the wide arrow, you'll just hold down Command. And you need to do that constantly. Doesn't make sense to go to the toolbar. It's going to be much harder. So you click the white arrow once, then you get the pen tool. From then on, you're going to use the Command key on Mac or Control when you need the white arrow. I'm going to prove to you its value. Next, though, it's a wise person who turns off the fill, no fill color, and makes sure they do have a stroke color. Why is that? It's easier to draw with lines first and then give the color. If it keeps filling automatically, this is what happens. I want you to notice this. If I have a fill color on and I'm going on one side, what's happening? Which side gets the fill? It's going back and forth. It would have been smarter to work with the fill turned off. So this way I could decide what I'm doing myself without the color confusing me. So I could do whatever I want. I want you to see that one more time. It's not like it's wrong to have the fill on, but it is damn confusing. Okay, color's on the left. Oh, no. What? So I totally recommend using no fill. Okay, so this is what I'd like you to do. You've clicked your white arrow, you've gone to the pen tool, you've checked that you have no fill, but you do have a stroke, right? That outline color. So this is what I'd like you to do. Can you imitate this? Press, release, press, release. I'm making a simple zigzag. Press, release, press, release, press, release. Now I'm going to prove something to you. Once you've drawn that, hold down Command if you're on a Mac, or Control if you're on Windows. Pick any anchor you want to move and move it. And I want you to see what happens when you let go of Command or Control. It knows where you were. So you get to finish what you were doing. At any point that you want to change your mind, hold down Command, move the anchors you don't like, And whenever you're ready, you let go and just continue where it was before you even touch the command key. Now that's not going to work if you don't use the trick I showed you, because this is what would happen if you didn't. You'd make your zigzag. You'd be like, oh, I need to move some of this stuff. Please don't do this, all right? Just want to prove something. If I get the white arrow 1, I have to reach across everything, which is pretty weird with this tool. I can make my moves, but then when I go back to the pen tool, it doesn't know where I was. It won't continue it. I mean, I could click here to start it up again. That would work. But if you want the freedom to just move on the fly, follow my instructions. White arrow, pen tool, check your colors, and then you could move. Whenever you want to make that adaptation, any changes, whoops, just hold down in Command or Control, make your changes, let go when you want, and you can continue. Is that working? So listen, this white arrow business, very few teachers are going to teach it that way. But I have to tell you something. I could not use this tool for the life of me. I had more drawing experience than everyone in my class by a long shot and could not make peace with the pen tool. One student showed me this trick and I was flying. Soon after, I was like, I could not believe the difference that it made just to be able to have it do what I want without reaching for tools all the time. All right. Thing is, though, that was just straight lines. Now, when you want curves, you don't click and release. Click and release is a dot, so you get straight lines. Click, release, best for straight lines ever. There's plenty of things, of course, I could draw that way with that particular method. You know, side view of a chair. You know, but it's like I'm not really that interested in straight lined objects right now because it's kind of obvious how this is going to work, right? So I'm going to focus on curves. All right, can everybody clear your screen? You should have, just the guide is still there from before. Let's do a couple quick exercises. All right. Continuous curve is the best place to start. Now, I got to ask you, have we done that before? Up and then under the line and then over the line and under the line, does that? I thought so. I see Claire says yes. Other people are giving me that poker face thing. Doesn't matter. We're going to do it now. If you remember or not, let's go do it. Watch for a minute or two before you jump in. Same rules. White arrow, pen tool, only stroke color on. Now watch this. I don't click and release. I press, and I'm very careful not to accidentally let go of the mouse, let go of the touchpad, whatever device you're using. Now, if I drag up, I'm telling the first curve to go up, not down, up. And I'm dragging a short distance. Now I'm moving over, and I press and drag down. Each time I move over, I press and drag in the opposite direction, up, down. Now this is what you don't want to do. Don't move over and click. Because what happens now? There's nothing I do is going to make this look right. So if you blew it, don't worry about it. Command Z your way back and start again. So the trick is don't just click and then drag. That's not going to work. Press. Now if you drag up, you move over, you press and drag down. Next time you press and drag up, you move over and you press and drag down. This is the continuous curve exercise. This is designed to help you learn how to stay completely smooth. And this would be very difficult with the pencil tool or the brush tool. But it's not too bad. We're going to be making a ribbon pretty soon. I would like to do one from scratch. So if you found this easy, great. If you found it hard, no big deal, right? I'm going to ask you to select all and press delete. Sorry, I got to click inside first. Get a clean page. I like the guide there because I don't want people clicking up in the air or clicking below until you really have a feel for the tool. In the future, do this by eye. You won't need any guides, right? Some of you might have experience with the tool already, right? All right, start with me then. Here's the idea. You press on the guide and drag up. How tall this is going to determine how tall your curve goes, right? So I'm not going to drag too tall. The angle is the angle of your curve. So I'm going to go straight up this time and let go.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
What tool are you using? Just the black arrow?
The pen tool.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's all about the pen tool. So
Right.
I do want to repeat though, I'm asking you to click the white arrow, then get the pen tool, right? So this pen tool, so listen, forgive me if I was kind of racing along there. I want to show you something. These are the partners of the pen tool, which we're barely going to use because we have shortcuts that are going to be far superior. So when I say pen tool, I only mean this one, the plain old pen tool, the original. All right, so I press and drag up. I remember that I went up because next time I press and drag down. Move over and you press and drag up. Now I'm going to start talking about symmetry now. When you move over and press and drag, you'll notice that the part you're dragging is like the head of a snake, but it also has a tail. If I match this tail to the one beside it, I've got symmetry. If it's too long, it's not balanced. If it's too short, it's imbalanced. But if it's the same length as its partner, I've got a very balanced symmetrical view. So every time I drag, I could watch the last direction line, that last handle, for information that's useful. I match it straight, so I'm straight. If I'm not, it's going to be wonky.
Professor,
Yes.
is there a way or like a guide we can turn on to tell that there is exactly the same amount of distance in between the start of one curve and then the next point and the next point?
Yes, there is. We could turn on the grid. So there's a grid there that some of you might want to practice with. Juliana, like in a way, like everything I teach you is designed to help get you toward improvising. Is the way that I teach. I want people to get as fluent as possible, even with an uptight tool like the pen tool. But since you asked, I'm going to do one that way, right? If you want to join me, just open up a new document. So again, I want the same one as the last one, sideways. So this is anyone who's interested in this. So she's asking about a better guide. So I'm going to do that. So we opened the ruler last time, but I could have done this. View menu, show grid. Now this might be helpful. I could pick a line. I could even add a guide if I want to. I don't have to. But just for the demonstration's sake, I'm also going to turn on the ruler. Command R. So the last time you just dragged the guide. This time I'm putting on top of a grid just to answer the good question. So I hope you can see it. There's the, this is the line I'm going to be loyal to, right? This is the boss, this one line. But if I start now and I press and drag up, I could actually count the little squares. So I just went 3, moving over 2, right? So now I've got a very exact kind of grid. Notice I've got my fill on. So it's hiding some stuff. I neglected my own advice. But now I can count boxes if I really want absolute perfection out of it. I'm just going to turn that fill color off. There we go.
I have a quick question about the grid.
Yes, please.
How do you like adjust the size of it? Because the grid it shows me is like the boxes are a lot smaller.
Are they? And I'm zooming in a lot, by the way. So if zooming's not what you want, I will mention kind of quickly. This is the default grid. And I don't want you to get too lost in playing with grids right now. But if one had the need for a custom grid, you do it from here. Illustrator, menu, preferences, guides and grid. So,
Okay.
again, I'm not going to make, I'm not a big grid guy, to be honest, even though it's a really good question. But on occasion, I have needed to actually modify the grid by telling it like grid line every inch or every half inch, how many little boxes, the subdivisions of the little boxes. You'd play with these two features.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I am kind of curious about, and I'd like for everyone to give me a reaction, right? If your camera's on, leave your thumb up or down. If your camera's off, find the reactions feature on the bar and give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. How's the continuous curve treating you? Is it good? Is it good? Okay, it looks like you guys, I appreciate the honesty. The couple people are giving me these down. I'm going to do this one more time, and then we're going to upgrade to something more complicated. You know, in fact, let's do it one more time. See what we would do to make it real world. I'm going to make a ribbon out of it this time and use a gradient, right? So we're going to bring it all home, right? So I'm going to turn the grid off myself, right? So you don't have to, right? So I'm going to turn it off. The choice can be yours. I'm going to the View menu, Hide Grid. So I didn't hide the guide. There it is. So if you want to get a fresh start with me, you can, you know, then just open up a new document. Horizontal is helpful for us right now. Turn on the rulers if you want to draw your own guide, right? These are options, right? I hope I'm being clear about that. Rulers. And I press here to bring down a guide. Now, the only reason I'm pointing this out is it's never going to look right if, hang on a second here, if you don't respect one line. You know, if you start just clicking where you want, nothing's going to help it. Okay, so to start over, please click the white arrow. Then get the pen tool. Make sure it's not this other similar tool or any of these other similar tools, the plain old pen. Check your color. You definitely don't want to fill, but you definitely do want to stroke. I always use the X key and make my choices. I'm going to actually just pick a different color right for my stroke. All right, continuous curve works like this. You press and drag and don't accidentally let go. And if you let go without thinking, Command Z and start over. Right? You don't let go until you've got a reasonable handle on what you're doing. So I'm going this distance. I'm moving over, and I'll admit it's pretty intuitive. Now when I press and drag down, I am watching the tail to see that it matches its partner to the left, because I'm after symmetry right now. Then I'm going to move over, and I'm judging by what I just did. I press and drag up. Now, one thing I'm pointing out most is if you drag up, next time, drag down. Next time, drag up. Next time, drag down. Now you're alternating is the idea. This is called continuous curve. It's a very common exercise. It works. Now I do want to point out, even before you're done, if you hate something, hold down the Command key if you're on a Mac, or Control if you're on Windows. Click any curve you don't like, and you could change its handles if you want to. Sometimes it's better just to grab the curve itself. Now remember, this only works if you click the white arrow when I asked you. Because I could let go now, and I just get to continue. This is one reason why I click the white arrow first. Let's get this stuff out of the way. So anytime I don't like one, I hold down Command, and I'll change it. So you click a curve you don't like or an anchor point, and all these handles will show up. So what I really want now is for them to look pretty even. I think these are too steep. So you might have to hold down your Command key because I want to show you what I'm looking for. What would be ideal would be something like this. They're not that high. So I'm holding down Command the whole time right now. I've got enough little hills. Now, I'm hoping that works better. Please remember that this will be on the YouTube video. It's now, let's see, we started class at 3. So it's about an hour, 40 minutes in. If you wanted to go to the video, just watch this part. About an hour, 40, something like that. I want to do an experiment with you. Can we use that curve for something? I want to combine the pen tool, some other techniques we used, and gradients. All right. Could everyone switch to the black arrow? Now, one thing I have to tell you, from now on, even if you switch tools, the pen tool is going to get the black arrow. So if I go back to the pen tool, I am going to click the white one again, because that's the only one that controls handles and anchor points and all that cool stuff. But I need the black one now because I want you to copy the entire curve you made. So this is what I mean. I got the black arrow, and I'm going to hold down Option and drag a copy. It's looking almost like a ribbon now.
What do we hold down in Windows?
Alt. Thank you for
Thank you.
asking. Alt. So you get used to it. It's always the same. Shift, luckily, is the same on both computers. But if I say Option for Mac, it's Alt for Windows every time. Right? Okay. Now, if you've got the second curve, I want to close it, which gives me a chance to tell you something else great about the pen tool. Even if a shape isn't selected, the pen tool recognizes anchors. So look what you could do. Just switch to the pen tool, and look what I'm going to do. I'm going to click here to say activate this anchor. And then I'm going to come here to say connect them. And little cursors are showing up. Those are not floating lines. They are actually connecting the object. That object is closed. So I'm going to go to the other end, in a second there, and do the same thing. Once I click an anchor, it says, oh yeah, activate that one. And then I just go to the one I want to connect it to. This is now a closed object. So what I want to do is, I want to fill it with a gradient. It's a perfect ribbon if I get the lighting right. So I took a top edge, duplicated it so it would completely match, right? And now I've got a closed object where every hill is matched on the opposite end, and every valley, you might say, is matched on the opposite end. So what I'm going to want to do next is all about color. I want light on the left side of each of these hills, these mountains. Light on the left and shadow on the right. So I want to show you how we're going to do it. All right. Please make sure your object's selected with the black arrow, so you could click anywhere on your closed object. Now I need you to bring the fill box to the front, because we're done with the line part, right? We're going to fill it. So bring the fill box to the front. So here's my fill box down here. I'm just going to click it. And now I'm going to get the gradient tool. Now, if we want a black and white, you know what? Let's make our own colors for this. So, get to your swatches. And let's go back to the yellow and orange gradient, since we got to know it. Okay. So you made your closed object, still selected. We're talking about fill color, so you made sure the fill box is in front, and you found your swatches. Honestly, there's many gradients you could start with, but I don't want to branch too many subjects. So I'm switching using the same yellow orangey one. Like I did before though, I'm going to ask you to throw the colors out that are in the middle. So you could do that from here on the gradient palette, or you could do it right here with the gradient tool. So I'm going to pluck them all off. I'm going to leave this one on the left, and I'm going to leave this one on the right. Okay. Before we go further though, you could change those colors. And then this is what you're going to want again though, just like the urn, just like the sphere, one really light and one really dark. It's not time for subtlety yet, right? It's time for clarity. So I want extreme difference, light and dark. So I could go to that first color and double click it and choose what I want. If I want to stick with yellows, that's fine, but I might go with a lighter one. I'm going to hit return when I like it, or enter on Windows. The other color is way over here. So I'm going to double click the next color. And do I want to stay with that color? Do I want to switch to something more orange? I don't know. But I want it to be clearly a shadow. So I am going to darken it somehow. As long as the two colors are clearly one's light and one's dark, you're good. Hit return. Now this is going to be a bit of a challenge unless you could focus with me, and then we're going to take a short break. You see, I'm going to drag that dark color way over to the left, and you'll see what the first part of the ribbon is going to look like. But then I'm going to use an Option or Alt trick every time I want copies. So here's the way it's going to start. I'm going to take the darker color, drag it all the way left until I like this one part. If I want, I could move this diamond over to spread that color, that gradient in between them. So I've got light on the left of this part of the ribbon, and I got a darker red on the right, my shadow on the right. Now, I'm hoping that's easy, because what I'm about to do is a little weirder, right? But incredibly cool. I have to steal the light and the shadow one at a time. Watch this. So I'm on a Mac. I'm holding down Option. I'm taking the light color. I'm jumping right over the shadow, like a leapfrog kind of thing, until I get about here. So if you missed it, all I did was I held down Option on my Mac or Alt on Windows, and I keep it down, and I drag a copy with me of the light. At this point, I want the same thing with the shadow. So I'm going to grab the shadow because I need a shadow on for the second mountain. Say, I'm calling it a mountain. So I'm holding down Option, I'm dragging this over until that looks good. Any point I want, I could move either the color a little or the little diamond. Spread my colors out a little bit better. The goal is you do want all the right sides to feel kind of dark.
Professor, my diamond's underneath my the circle. How do I get it? How do I separate them?
Separate them. Can you say that one more time?
When I press the Option and drag the color over, the diamond landed right beneath the circle, and I can't seem to separate the diamond from the circle, and it's just like one straight thing instead of a blend.
Well, let me see if that happens to me. And I'm holding down Option, I'm dragging a new one, and I keep going past that last circle, right? So that they're easy to see apart. Now, if you accidentally dragged it here, right, you'd lose the diamond because it's buried underneath there, and the other shape. You'll just have to take the one on top and drag it further over.
Okay.
So that's working for you? All right, good.
Yes.
Excellent. So yeah, that happens a lot. So here's the idea though. You want to get sensitive to the light, right? It's a technique, but you've got to count on your eyes. The left side of each of these is sharing the light source, right? Which means the right side, every time I'm dragging, copying a shadow, has got to express that there's a darker side. If I get little thin strips, I don't really like that. So I'll usually baby it by moving the color or that little diamond around to try to spread it out a bit. That could be finicky. You know, it just means that something's too close to it. Whether or not that would print is hard to say. And whenever you're ready, you go to the next one. You get your light, get it in the ballpark. Then you get your shadow. So a lot about how light falls today, and we're using gradients for that. I want to show you something about this. Again, this is interesting once there's a background there. Now, I'm not saying the background has to be a gradient. The background could be a flat color. I'm going to send it to the back. And I'm going to even take the stroke off again. Just want you to see for yourself how much space and light there is. Look at that. You know, very 3D, but this is a 2D program. And you know, it's going to have a lot to do with a few things. If it's a flat background, does the color relate in some way? You know, does it relate well? It's not so bad, you know. It's really going to be all about those relationships of the background and the foreground. The foreground has a very prominent light and shadow, though, and that's what's helped me make this happen. So I've been asking a lot about the pen tool, but how's the gradient tool behaving? Is that working for you? Right. So I got some people feeling very positive about it. I'm going to squeeze in reviews of this because the tool's that powerful, as well as I said, its cousins, because there's other, there's gradient mesh, which is wonderful, and there's a couple other things that have come out recently that are great. So I think we do need a break, however, because I usually give you a break much sooner than this. And I just want to see where we're at for time. We're actually doing great somehow. Guys, listen, I know you guys need breaks more often. And if I was like championing education, what's the new phase? I'd say every teacher, you got to give a break every hour. And then I don't do it. Because I'm just like the other teachers. If I don't get this information across, this is it. You don't get Illustrator 2. And don't blame FIT. All the schools I've worked at were like this. Right? I've taught this at 3 different colleges. All 3 had 1 semester of this huge program. So the break's going to be short. Okay, let's come back at, can I do this? I think I can. 5:15, right? Don't be late because I'm jumping right into something really cool. We're in pretty advanced territory right now. So wash your face, do whatever you need. I'll see you at 5:15. Okay. Let's see. All right, back from the break, and we're talking about discontinuous curves. All right. So I think the ribbon's a perfect example of a continuous curve. It goes up, comes down, up, come down, but it never goes up twice. It never changes direction sharply. It's always smooth. So I'm going to ask you to open up a new document, same dimensions. And as I said, I'm going to ask you to watch first. I am going to need a guide or a grid. At this point, the choice is kind of yours. I'm going to turn my ruler on with Command R and drag a guide down just because it's a little simpler. Okay, I'm clicking that white arrow because I'm going to want to make changes as I work. I'm switching to the main pen tool, the one we're focusing on. White arrow, then the pen tool. Now I'm looking at the colors and I'm turning off that white fill, but I've got a black stroke on that I'm going to keep. Now watch this. If I want the curves to go on top of the line, I start the same way as the last exercise. I press and I drag up, and then I press and I drag down. The problem is this one, this handle, is telling the next curve to go under the line. So you can see no matter where I go with it, it's turning beneath the line. And that's because this direction line, this handle, is pointing down. I want it to point up. So that means I have to move it. Now this is the first time we've had to do that. So how do you move a handle that's pointing the wrong way? Well, you hold down Option or Alt. So I'm holding down Option on my Mac, and I bring it back up, and I'm taking it right next to its friend. I don't want to go on top because it's going to hide it. I'll go right next to it. So now that's gone up. So I can safely come over here and drag down. Letter M. Now again, this here is telling the next line to go down because that's what I wanted here, and it thinks I'm continuing for a continuous curve, but I don't want it to continue. So I hold down Option or Alt, and I bring it up. So you'll notice I do mostly dragging down, but I can't keep doing that, right? Because it's going to look like this, which is not what I'm after. So the only way to get what I want is to notice this handle is going the wrong way, hold down Option or Alt, and bring it up. All right, I'm going to do that over. So if you haven't joined me yet, you might want to select all and press delete. It won't delete the guide. They're locked in this program. And I'm going to start over. But listen, folks, you know, in driver's ed, they tell you to hold the wheel like this. So I'm giving you all these instructions, and you might be thinking some of them don't matter, but they do. So again, I would click that white arrow, and I would check your colors. All right. So I've already done that. White arrow, pen tool, check my colors. All right, here I go. The first curve you know how to do. You drag it up, tell it you're going up. I'm even going to tilt it a little bit just for the fun of it. You go to the next one and you kind of match its partner, mirror image. Here's where it changes though. This line is telling the next curve to go in the wrong direction. When you want to change that direction, you hold down Option or Alt. Keep it down. Drag the handle where you think it should go. Let go of the keys and go back down to that guide to press and drag again. Each time you finish a curve, you have to correct this handle. So I'm holding down Option or Alt and I bring it up again. I'm making a mirror image of its partner. I let go and I finish it. So the only time I need a key for this exercise is when I'm preparing the next curve. Saying, hey driver, don't go there. All right, so I'm holding down Option or Alt and I bring it back up. I'm going to be showing you another technique for this, if not today, soon, that some of you are going to prefer. There's two different valid ways to do it. I do want to mention though, the Command key still works for other things, like moving your anchors or grabbing handles that are already going the right direction. The only time you need the Option or Alt trick is if your handle's going in the wrong direction. So I'm holding down Option and I keep going. Now, if that went well, you should deselect by holding down Command, since it gives you the arrow, and click off. Now, if it went well, I want you to do another one right underneath it. If you feel the need for a guide, you know how to make a guide now. If you don't feel the need for a guide, do it by eye. What would that look like? So you have to deselect the last one. The easiest way is just hold down Command and click off. So here's the new one. I press and drag up. If I wanted to tilt, I could tilt it. I move over. I press and drag down. And that was the whole recipe for continuous curves, but not for this one. So for this one, I have to move the handle that's pointing the wrong direction. So I hold down Option again and change direction. Now, I'm going to be trying an exercise with you in a couple minutes, a brief exercise. So once I know that all the anchors are lined up, this is a handle. This on the other end's a handle. The ones in the middle are anchors, right? Then I could start trusting my eyes or other features in the program to make sure I'm not clicking wildly. All right, Option for this guy though. Oops. So, sorry, I clicked something wildly there. All right, and then I hold down Command, I click off to deselect it. This is a little harder. Now, the only thing I got to say is, if it isn't working, do not beat yourself up, okay? That's ridiculous. I don't mind being honest with you. I was the worst in my entire class. Really, at first. I had much more drawing experience than everybody else. So I had habits to break. I already had a lot of experience, but not with Illustrator. So I had to kind of like tough it for a little while. And then suddenly like, oh, I got it. And it picked up. You might have to be patient with yourself. I want to show you one more variation though, just to see if any of you like it more, right? So again, even if you're tired, try to focus with me on this next idea. It's called the sprout method. And I made that name up because I'm not going to move handles that are pointing in the wrong way. I'm going to flat out ignore them and sprout better ones right out of the anchor point. Sprout it like a plant coming out of a seed. Watch this and see if you like it. So you might want to deselect your last one so you could jump in when you want. I'm going to drag a guide this time. So here's the way it goes. It starts the same. You press and drag up. You move over and you press and drag down. Now here's the thing. Some people don't like moving this handle. They're like, can I just make a new one? Yes. It's still Option or Alt. Option for Mac, Alt for Windows, but you don't start on the handle if you want to make a new one. I'm holding down Option. You sprout it right out of the anchor. Now, I want to be blunt. This is how I do it. It's not the traditional way, but I find it superior. So I hold down Option. I'm going to ignore this handle. It's clearly wrong. And I hold down Option, drag right out of the anchor, and say, go this way. And the reason I like that is when I'm tired of exercises and I'm ready to draw, I could go where I want. I'm going to go to the side now. And now I'm going to go back down. So what I want to say is, if you liked dragging the handle, you could do that anytime you want. Hold down Option or Alt and drag the handle. But if you don't like it, you might prefer this idea. Instead of going to the handle, you start on the anchor itself. Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, that's not different. But if you're going to do it on the anchor, you get to just tell it the direction you want it to go right away. So there's less dragging around. Both the methods are just as good. It's a personal choice. This is the sprout method, sprouting right out of the anchor. And when you close an object, by the way, you do have to hold down Option or Alt to close it. I have to repeat that a lot when you close it, because if you don't, that's what happens. Do you guys see the difference between the sprout method and the older method? So I don't know about you, it's personal, you know, and it really is personal, but I've been doing it the old way for years. There's someone much younger than me that's like, hey, you ever tried this? And for me, I was like, what? That was the last ingredient that I really needed. So now most people don't freehand with the pen tool. They sketch, bring it in, fix it with the pen tool, right? But I freehand with the tool because it gave me a lot of freedom. Listen, folks, we don't have a lot of time. I want to try something, and it's include a small gift for you for anyone who wants to practice pen tool. Now, how many of you guys already downloaded today's assets? Anybody? Half the class, it looks like. So if you didn't, come join me because I have to download mine. So this is what we got to do. We have to get to the handout. It says then download today's assets, and here's the link. Or just to the home page is just as good. It's class 5 assets. So click either this or the part that says downloads on the handout. Click it. Now, if you're in Chrome, you just saw an arrow point down telling you downloaded something from the internet. And some other browsers act the same. Now, there's one thing I have to point out that's kind of boring. It's a .zip. Mac people, to open a zip, don't click this little arrow here. Click right on the name. So that's Mac people first. That's going to take you to downloads and unzip the file. And you'll see there's this thing inside called C-shapes exercise. Now I want to repeat that for Windows people to be clearer. If I need to send you several parts or a folder, I have to compress it. You can't send several parts at once, and you can't even send a folder at once unless you compress it. And one way to compress it is to make a .zip. So I make zips when I need to give you stuff, and you go get them. But they have to be unzipped. So if you're on Windows, you should find your way to downloads. So I'm not on Windows, so my demo is a little iffy here. But once you download something, you find your way to your downloads folder. And I need to say something just to Windows people. Windows lets you work on a zip, even if you didn't unzip it. I'm going to repeat this a few times. That means there could be 20 things in there, and it lets me use the parts, even if I don't unzip it, turn it into a regular folder. Thing is, I don't want you to get in that habit because it won't work in all industries. I do a lot of animation, and my parts don't work properly unless I unzip. On Windows, we call that extract. Extract. So if you're on Windows right now, find the zip, click it once, then right click so you get a menu. This is just for Windows people. Mac people, if you're looking at that, you just double click it. But on Windows, please don't just double click it. I haven't had good results. I'd rather you click it once, then right click so a menu shows up. Your menu will say extract or extract all. Anything with the word extract all would be best. Please choose that. Now I have to admit, today there's not going to be a folder anyhow. Oops. There's only going to be this one part. It's a PNG, it's a kind of photo. I'd like you to drag that photo wherever you're comfortable. I'm going to put mine on the desktop, but you have to remember where you put it. We're going to need it in a minute. If you want to leave it in downloads, I suppose that's okay. I'm going to put mine on the desktop this way. Oops, I just dragged it to the wrong place. Command Z. That was messy. I don't have time to be messy like that. I just Command Z'd it though, so it should be all right. There we go. Let me just get this open so I don't do that again. I'm dragging mine to the desktop. There we go. And now I go to the desktop. I want to show you what that looks like. So I know we're all on different kinds of computers, so it might take a little while. Once you've unzipped it, you've found where you put it on the desktop downloads. This is what it looks like. These are pen tool exercises, and I want to show you how to use them. All right, this is going to have to be short, but I want to ask you something. Did everyone successfully download it? And I know a lot of you guys use Mac, so you probably all unzipped it with the double click. But if you're on Windows, please be sure you extracted, just to be sure it's going to work. I'm not a Windows expert, but my animation class, everything went crazy when people didn't want to extract. So I just don't want to bother with that. All right, I want to show you something incredibly valuable. How do you bring in imagery into the Illustrator file? So there's two motives for that. Maybe you're designing a poster that includes 10 little photographs. All right, you're doing everything else, illustration and text, typography, but you need the 10 photos. That's called place. But here's another reason. You did the perfect sketch for project 2, or sketch for another illustration, and you want to bring the sketch in so you could use the pen tool over your own sketch, or any tool, gradients, etc. That's also place. Let's try it with this one. Okay, so everybody, let's go back to Illustrator. So in other words, you can bring it for photos you want to keep or for sketches that you're only going to use temporarily. So let's get back into Illustrator. I'd like you to open a new file. I need this one to be vertical though. So back in Illustrator, File menu, New. I'm going to stick with letter size and make sure it's upright for orientation. The usual, like that. So it's 8.5 wide by 11 tall. All right, click Create. So say you did this perfect sketch. You can't wait to see what you could do with it in Illustrator, right? You want to get it in. The first thing, though, is make a layer for it. So Christine's love of layers she mentioned earlier, this is a perfect time for it. Can everybody join me? If your layer palette is not out, go to the window menu and get layers. Window menu, layers. We're going to put the sketch there. We're going to lock it, but we're only going to draw on a higher layer. I don't want to accidentally keep moving the sketch around, right? Or have any kind of challenge based on a messy file. So first we're going to get it, then we're going to lock it. All right, now to get the artwork. In Illustrator, go to the File menu and choose File menu, Place. So File menu, Place. This is the correct way to bring in scans, photographs, and that kind of thing. File menu, Place. You have to remember where your image is. I put mine on the desktop. And it's called C shapes, so it starts with the letter S. and stop here. Do not click the blue button. So where you should be is, you did File Menu Place, then you went to find the image you want to place on the Illustrator document. Now the thing is, you got to check one thing before you actually finalize it. And that's all about this feature here called Link. Now this is going to take a while to cover together. But for today, I want to say, if your link is on, turn it off. Turn link off. And here's why. You can't lose the artwork now. You can't lose the photo or the scan. If it's linked, that means you have to travel with that separate item. So you have the Illustrator file and the photo. And if there's 10 photos, all 10 photos on the Illustrator file, or they won't show up. So today I want to keep it easy. Uncheck link. That means it's permanent like a tattoo. So please click place. Now you'll see 1/1. That means there's only one image and it's asking you to place it. If there were 10, it would be 1/10. I'd like you to click in the top left corner to see what that'll do. Now, once you've placed it, feel free to move it around. You could just get the black arrow if you want to move it. So I want to make a quick point. Right now, we're doing it for a pen tool exercise, but this could be a sketch, as I said, or a photo, and I've used both a lot, right? Remember how we checked the layer palette first, though? So this is now the underlying sketch. I want to lock it. So I want you to go back to your layer palette. Next to the eye is an extra column. If you click there, there's a lock. So now I can't draw on this layer. I can't move it. It's locked. I know this is very small, so I hope everybody could see it. Now, before you draw, you have to make another layer. So now that that's locked, on the bottom of the layer palette is a plain plus sign, a little square, not the one with the crafty arrow, just this one right here. Click it only once. This is going to be the drawing. I want to say, of course, you can make as many layers as you want, right? But right now, I think one's enough. I want to focus on this umbrella, possibly because I'm kind of addicted to the Umbrella Academy. Anybody watch that show? I don't know why I like it. It's a very bloody show. But anyway, we're going to want to zoom in on it. So if you're comfortable zooming, you want to zoom in on this umbrella. Otherwise, go to the window menu with me and get the navigator out. I've shown this to you before. Window menu, alphabetical order, and you can go down to navigator. You could zoom any way you want, but what I like about this is, if I click this little mountain here, I'm zooming in, and then it shows me where I am, so I could choose what I want to look at. I drag it over the little umbrella or over the fan. We want the umbrella. So you could choose the amount of zoom conveniently, and you could even move it around conveniently. Now look, the rod on the umbrella is easy. There's no dragging. It's just click, 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 click. The one final one to close it. It's the umbrella part I want to talk to you about. Can you all watch before you join me? I could tell by your faces, people are like, let me at it. I understand. But I just want to show you the one time, all right? And then I'm going to let you loose. Here it goes. You know what I'm going to say first. Click the white arrow, get the pen tool. My colors are crazy. I was just headed for trouble. White fill, no stroke. That would have really confused me, right? I'm going to turn the fill off. I'm going to get the stroke, find myself some black to work with, or some other color. All right, so here I go. I want to show you, I recommend starting here. Now these red lines are there to suggest how long you drag the handles. So I'm going to start up here, press and drag this way, right? Notice it told me how long to go. But now, let me just move this. I'm going to come over here, press and drag, and I watch the tail this time. I'm going to do that again because I want to make that distinction clear. So I pressed and dragged up to here to start this large curve. It's a long line because I'm making a long curve. And two, because it's an umbrella. It's not an archway, right? So I'm tilting it. Then I come way over here. You could tell it wants to finish the umbrella. I press and drag, but now I'm watching the tail to see that umbrella puff up to get it to the shape I want. Now here's the big problem though. This handle's going so far in the wrong direction. No matter what I do, I'm never going to make this little arc here. I have to move it. So it is going to be the Option or Alt trick. You know, Mac, Windows, Option or Alt. The question is, do you want to sprout it or do you want to drag it? It's totally up to you. They're both exactly the same. To drag it, you hold down your Option key or Alt and drag this to here. If you'd rather sprout it, hold down Option or Alt and do it right out of the anchor. Then you move on, press and drag. But you'll notice this umbrella, it's all discontinuous curves, all of it. I have to keep on moving that handle. So again, I either drag it around, this time I'll do it that way, drag it around. So I think one thing that's going to take a little effort is to quickly know the difference between an anchor point and a handle. The anchor points are right on the drawing. The handles stick off in space. They're saying, go here, go there, right? So anyway, I'm going to finish this one. And I'm watching the tail end. And then I choose, do I want to sprout it or drag it around? I hold down my key either way, and I'm preferring sprouting lately. So one thing I've been very cheap about is closing objects. I want to tell you why you have to hold down Option or Alt to close the object. Just watch, you'll see for yourself. This is without Option. It broke. I'm going to Command Z. So when you close the object, keep Option or Alt down. And if it's fun, give it a fill color. So I want to point out, anytime you wanted, you could have held down the Command key to move anchors. Or you could have held the Option key. Well, we did a lot of Option, so I don't have much to say about that. But the Command key is if you like the directions of things, you just want to alter them. You know, make them big, longer or shorter or change angles. You could still do that. Options just to change directions mostly. I'm curious, how'd your first round on the umbrella go? I'm seeing pretty reasonable satisfaction. So look, only because we're running out of time, I'm not going to go further with this particular template. So I do want to say a little bit. We may come back to it. Anyone who wants to master this tool, continuous curves, like the ribbon is good. Discontinuous, like we just did, and this. Now you own it. So I just want to point out a couple quick things. I would probably do this one next. It's got the most curves. I think the tree's kind of easy. The truck's pretty easy too, except for the wheels. I think I would do this fan. I think that's a fan. And these three, the boat, the cloud, the water. They're all challenging enough to really get some practice out of it. So folks, listen, I want to tell you that we touched on file menu place today. So that would be in the last half hour of the video when it goes live for anyone who wants to revisit it. It makes sense. You know, a lot of people like to sketch at great length before they go in and make these very refined Illustrator versions of it. So file menu place is good. We're going to be coming back to that subject. We're going to be doing more pen tool and maybe more gradients. So today was a big day, 3 very large subjects. There's one thing on the handout I'm skipping today called groups, and I'll come back to that. We've even tried it before. I'm just going to say a little bit about the homework. You know what, before I do, because we got 15 minutes, anybody have any questions that you could form about any of this stuff from today?
Can you please just go over how you closed the last shape? It didn't work with the discontinuous curve.
Gotcha. I'll be glad to do that, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to open up a new document just to make that point crystal clear. So say I'm freehand drawing with this tool now. I'm running up the back of someone's head. Give me a second here. Let me move that. And it's very, very smooth, right? Because of the tool I'm choosing to use. I'm doing some straight lines, notice, as well as curves. making changes as I go. This is propaganda. Right? The question, though, was about closing it. So watch this. If I really want to fill this guy with color, I have to close him. I can't leave him open. The thing is, if I don't hold down Option or Alt, I'll break his neck. Well, it actually looks better. But it changed this curve. If I wanted to leave the prior curves alone, I have to hold down Option or Alt on Windows. Then I press and drag it the way that I want, but the curve on the opposite side is not adjusted. So without Option, the other curve gets altered. With Option, you could focus on the curve that you're actually dealing with while closing the object. Now I could easily color it. I could, you know, do any number of tricks. Sorry. So I don't know. Did that help, Juliana? Great. So yeah, that's a weird one. It really is a weird one. I'm not sure that Illustrator always did that. I've been using Illustrator for about 22 years, 23 years. And so I'm like a historian. But I think that was kind of new. You know, and the main reason is the original purpose of this tool was all about continuous curves. You know, the guy who invented it, legend says, designed airplanes. When he wanted to change a curve, he wanted the opposite side to change too, to make sure that there was airflow. So he was always concerned that one curve affects the one next to it. So it was only artists later on who said, no, 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 I need some of this. You know, so they're not seesawing anymore. All right, I want to just get to the handout, make sure I didn't forget anything important. All right, not a lot of instructions on the handout, just sort of a map of what the subjects were. You could see we ran through all of this but groups. It's an easy one. We're going to come back to it. And I want to say about the work that's due next week, nothing has changed. All we're doing is moving from the sketch to the first Illustrator draft, right? So I want to be very much the teacher about this, right? If you didn't do the sketches, you don't have a chance to think if they were a good idea or not. A couple people sent them to me and politely asked in the email, they said, I'm in section 101. I'm about, you know, please, if you write me, let me know what section you're in, right? And don't just send me artwork. Tell me why you're sending me the artwork, right? Because it's not required. And say that I just want some feedback. So somebody was doing shampooing hair. I had like 3 people doing shampooing hair. And one person, 3 of the drawings were just about the same. This is conditioning. This is shampoo. You know what I mean? And I was just like, oh, that's a problem. They're just too similar, right? So I want to go over something with you kind of quickly. These are the samples from last week. I want to revisit them. So I'm going to click this link. It's a big file, so it might take a while to load. I want to point something out about this one. There's 6 steps of this particular grilled cheese. And every drawing is interesting, even though these 2 are the most similar. The butter and the butter, melted butter, is so different than the bread that they stay very interesting. So I'm getting a variety out of it. It's very, very clear ingredient slicing. Now, if someone said, hey, I want to do this thing, but it wasn't on your handout, that's the point. You're supposed to come up with your own thing, right? So this one here, again, is very repetitive in a weird way. It's so much about that glass, but the glass changes size, it adds elements, somehow it stays interesting. Well, this is one of my favorites because every image is completely different, and yet it's clear as a bell. You know, milk, mix, and eggs, right? So I can tell exactly what's going on. You know, except for that, I don't know when the eggs got mixed in there. They're mysteriously sitting. I just noticed that. But the graphics are beautiful, very simple, lots of pen tool, right? Very, very smooth stuff. You know, and look, folks, I want to be very clear. Someone sent me an image and said, hey, I did this in another class. Can I use it? It was really similar. It was surprising. 6 steps towards something. Well, the first answer is no, because I'm here so you practice and get better. So the answer is just no. I said you could use the concept though. You know, clear concept. Yeah. The other thing I want to say to you is it's not just about the instructions. It's still about beauty and impact because frankly, everything you make should be beautiful in some way. Otherwise, the audience ignores it or they lose confidence in it. You know, so it's got to do more than just describe it. It's got to be beautiful. This one's beautiful. This one's unusual. It feels like an underground comic about making tea. You know, but it's about the sizes and the shapes and the colors. You know, it all matters. So at first you want to get your 6 steps down, 6 reasonable drawings, but then it's about placement and color and what's the negative space doing, all the stuff we talked about in Project 1. About text. If you use text, here are the rules. Don't use it because your drawings are not clear. Like if you're drawing someone combing hair and I can't tell they're combing, don't write combing hair. That's not a good reason, right? That's a cop-out, right? So the idea is you want to communicate visually. So if you look at this one, everything's communicated clear as a bell. They didn't need that text. They wanted it as a design element, and it sure looks great. It makes the whole thing extra bold, and the airspace is active in an interesting way. But yeah, I got this little title. That's kind of cool. So all I want to say is if you want to use text, I will accept it as long as you're not using it to hide, you know, to hide behind. But if you're using it for good reason, I do want you to remember about outlines though. Like you give it to me without outlines, I'm probably going to see the wrong font. So I don't want to go over that feature, create outlines, right? If you don't remember it, just jot it down. You can look it up online because we did it twice, so I can't do it again. Create outlines. So this person did that. That's an option, not requirement. Do you guys remember these from last week? So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I'm just using them to point things out. Beautiful, interesting, challenging, but clear when I pay attention. This graphic description of flowers is of cutting off the flower heads. And upon looking at it, I love that they didn't draw the whole flower because the flowers aren't the point. It's actually the stems. The person takes the stems over here and they sharpen them like little spears because it's all part of a process where they're going to poke them into this other plant and make them grow. I think the choice of not drawing the flowers was kind of brilliant on this one. Also, very beautiful, all pen tool. So it's interesting when you look at these, which are screamingly pen tool and which ones aren't. I just want to go over that. Pen tool all over the place here. Smooth, very freehand, except for maybe the glasses. Other things are openly not smooth, like the ice cubes and all this. Pencil tool stuff. Another all pen tool one. There's a mix. Probably a mix. All pen tool. This is probably pencil tool. So one of the points I'm trying to make is I'm not here to convince you really, ultimately, of how you use Adobe Illustrator, but I am here to guide you to more opportunity. Pen tool's a good idea because you do want to master it. So if you're feeling like, you know, I think I do want to do this in the pen tool, then do it. Let's see how it goes. All right, let me get back to that handout. So guys, one thing I'm concerned with, because I didn't make a big deal out of it, is the width and height. This is the width, and this is the height. So, and I do want a 1/2 inch margin. I'm going to do a 1 minute demonstration. Give me a second here. So there's the width and the height, and it mentions the 1/2 inch margin. So I'm going to do this right now real quickly, just since it's been a little while. Back in Illustrator, I'm doing File Menu, New, and what was that? 8.5 by 14 was what I wanted. So I wanted to be 14 inches wide by 8.5 tall. So I'm going to click Create. So it gives us room. That's the shape of the ones you were just looking at. About the margins, I do have to turn the rulers on. And I know you guys know this, but I'm not sure you remember. Rulers on. And I'm going to need to zoom in a lot for this next little step. because I want to see ½ inch really easily. There's my ½ inch mark there. There's the ½ inch here. Is that a half? No, this is a half, so I better be careful. Wait, let me do this, the obvious one first. So here's a ½ inch. And I'm dragging down. All right, so this is a ½ inch. There we go. I could get to the other side however I want, but since I'm in the navigator, I'm just going to travel over there. So this is 8.5 dimension. I'm going to drag down to here. That's 8 inches, leaving me a ½ inch margin. And here I am, another ½ inch margin. And then I'm going to back out, make sure this looks right. All right, so that's what we want. Hang on a second there, sorry. I lost everybody, give me a moment. That just happened. Give me a second, something very odd just happened on my computer. Everyone just disappeared. This is a new thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. There we go. Any questions for me? None? So again, please be sure to read the box, even if you speed read it. Just make sure you're not skipping anything. You know, it feels rotten when someone does a great job and the whole project's 5 by 5 inches or something like that. You know, we're at a very well-known school. We have very high standards. We want to keep it that way. So if there are no questions, I'm going to let everybody go. Folks, I must say you're a very focused bunch, but you know, secretly, I had a guest the other day who goes to Pratt, and she's your age, average age, and she was telling me all the truth about experience of art school. She's like, yeah, you know, we all learn how to look focused on Zoom. I said, no, you're lying. But anyway, if any of you are faking it, you're good. You should go to acting school. But to the rest of you, I respect your effort. So guys, listen, I will check my mail as often as I can if anybody wants to send me anything to look at. I can't promise because things are very intense right now and I'm leaving town. But I'll take my computer with me and see if I could be helpful from the distance. See y'all next week.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Bye-bye.